Okay, hello and good morning to all of you. Today we will study the next part of RARP server. Okay, so I think if I go back there in the previous lecture, we can see that we have studied about RARP server. Okay, so what was ARP? ARP was used to convert IP is used to get the MAC address having a IP address. Okay, so what is RARP? RARP is when you want a IP address and you have a MAC address. Okay, so both are different. Now we have seen that there are many disadvantages that are linked to this particular RARP server. Is that we have to place RARP server in every network. So if you place RARP server in every network, there will be a what do you say, a distributed network. Okay, so if it is a distributed network, then it may have complex updations, deletions, and there are many more things that we have to extra we have to it means that it just increases the complexity of the system. Another disadvantage is that the assignment that the table that RARP prepares is a static table, so it is not a dynamic, it is a static table. So that is one disadvantage. And again, these are all the protocols. ARP and RARP lies at network layer. Okay, so now the solution to these two problems are BOOTP and DHCP, and both the protocols lies at application layer. So I'm again discussing BOOTP and DHCP, not in application layer here, because these are the advanced version of RARP. So keep that in mind. BOOTP and DHCP both lies in application layer. Keep that in mind. Okay, say both runs on application layer. Now, if you remember the disadvantages of RARP, it tries to solve the disadvantages of RARP. Okay, so first of all, you can call it evolution. Evolution means it is just an advanced version of the RARP server, and BOOTP full form is Bootstrap Protocol. Okay, so in your syllabus part, it is actually written there as boot s, but there is no topic related to boot s. Okay, so there is no such topic at boot s, but actually it should be boot p, but I think there is a little bit mistake in the computer network syllabus. Okay, so it was meant, if you read the syllabus, it is not boot s, but it is actually boot p. Okay, so now everything is very similar to RARP server. If you remember, there was your machines, and there was your boot P server, and another server can also like OS server. So OS is given, every machine is taking OS from this particular server. Okay, there will be your what do you say it, like your router. Okay, so everything is quite similar. If you say from application layer, it will get a message. From transport layer, it will get the message, the port, source port and destination port. Then at network layer, now how it interprets that message, because it will be set at here by this particular application layer. Okay, so in this message, it is already contained that what happens at network layer. Now what happens at network layer? Network layer will take that message and write it, include rather than source IP and destination IP, it will include 0.0.0.0. So this particular thing says that I do not have any IP, and it will destination IP will be R255.255.255.255. You remember, if it is a limited broadcasting. Okay, so when you want to broadcast in your own network, so this particular address is used. Okay, so now here till here. Okay, so what happens at DLL? Now DLL will include the source MAC address. What is source MAC address? Suppose the source MAC address is A, the packet is originated from A, and everything will be included here. So just keep in mind, everything till upward, from the packet upward, it is included in here with the what do you say, a broadcasting destination MAC. Okay, so it will be like this. Okay, so you already know six sets of F. Now if you're seeing here, At physical layer, no, you will see what will happen. You are standing at A, then there is server, then there is boot P, and now because of this particular address, everything will be broadcasted. Okay, so if you're seeing here, everything is quite similar that you have seen here. Only the difference here will be same procedure. If you remember, same procedure as ARPs, RARP. So I'll tell you the difference point here. So I'm only telling you the same points here. It will have, if you follow this, it will have a same disadvantage. And previously when we started, we used to place bootp server at every network. Okay, so if you place a bootp server at every network, then again this is the same disadvantage. Okay, so I can say that we are not improved there. Okay, so it is very similar, only the name is changed. If I place a bootp server at every network, there is nothing new. Okay, so what happens in that now, how do I change this? Now this particular step is not followed here. Now instead of placing bootp at every server, we use something called, the solution for this was, again I again do not write it like this. I'll write that RARP server are placed at every network, so it has a disadvantage. Now to solve this, what we do something called a relay agent. Okay, so what this relay agent do, I'll again introduce you to the same problem here. Suppose this is the bootp server. This is router. This is another network. This is another network. And there is your relay agent. Now relay agent will be kept at every network here. So I'll tell you how does actually functions. So suppose there is because if you are standing at A, now bootp server lies in your domain or in your area. So when you broadcast the message, you will get a unicast reply from the bootp and you will get to know the IP address. There is no problem in that. But what happens when this B wants to broadcast the same message, like it wants to have its IP address. Already it has a MAC address. Okay, so we already know bootp server will again contain the same entries, all the MAC addresses and the my IP addresses corresponding to the MAC addresses. Okay, so now suppose I now want to tell you what actually this. Now the first point will be B broadcast. Okay, so why does B broadcast? Because it wants its IP address that is mapped to its MAC address. Okay, so it wants its IP address. That is why it is sending a broadcast message. Now, what happens due to this broadcasting? So a relay agent will see the message from B. Okay, second step will be that. Okay, first step, when you do a broadcasting, this particular broadcasting will be ignored by this router and will be discarded by this router as well, because it is designed in such a way the router will not it will understand that this particular packet is supposed to broadcast in the same domain. Okay, so that is why it is not, the router does not pass the broadcasting to another network. Okay, so now when relay agent see the message from B, now relay, what do relay agent have? Now relay agent has the IP address of bootp. Okay, so wherever bootp server is stored, now this relay agent has a IP address of it. Now another thing that relay agent has, now at this time relay agent sees that B wants IP. Okay, so at this time relay agent knows that B wants IP. So what it do? The third step will be relay agent contacts relay agent send a unicast request to bootp. Okay, so why it is able to send a unicast request to bootp? Because it has the IP address of bootp. So that is why it is able to send the unicast request saying that B needs this IP. Okay, so B needs its IP address. Okay, so now what will happen? So keep that in mind. In this step, you may be thinking that the bootp server can directly reply to B by sending its IP address, but it does not do that. So it replies, boot P replies to relay agent. Okay, boot P replies to relay agent only. So I do not want, because uh, it is logical. Okay, so who have asked for it, it will reply it to that rather than replying it to B, because again there may be more complexities, like I do not have the direct IP address of B. It is contained within relay agent, so I do not want to complicate things. I'm just sending the reply, that is a unicast reply, back to a relay agent by with the IP address of B. Okay, so with this, now it will understand the relay agent. Now relay agent have the IP address of B. Now what it do? Now relay agent will send unicast reply to B with its IP. Okay, so that is how this problem is solved. Now uh, again I'll repeat the procedure. Now what will happen when B broadcast the messages to all the connected computers, it will be seen by the relay agent. So relay agent have the IP address of boot P. So it will send a unicast, because now it has the IP address of boot P. Now it can bypass the router. Okay. So because of IP, it now this router can able to forward the message to boot P. Now boot P will see that what is the corresponding address of boot of this machine B, what is the IP address. So it will reply the IP address back, because it also has the address of relay agent. It will reply it back to the relay agent, and then relay agent has the responsibility to reply it back to B. Now with this just simple step, now what happens is that now this does not remain a distributed system. Now it became a centralized system. Okay, why? Because every entry is maintained at one server, that is a one boot P server. Okay, so now with this centralized system, now the complex updation deletion, now it will again be avoided. Okay, because only one table is updated. If one address is assigned to any machine, one table is updated. Now every relay agent is accessing the same table. Okay, there may be issues that is concurrency related. So if two relay agents want to access the same entry, something like that, it can happen. But again, the concurrency control mechanism is already defined. Okay, so whatever you have studied in your DBMS, the same concurrency control mechanism can be employed here. Okay, so if you see here, the concept of computer science will be applied universally. Okay, so if you see here in DBMS, you may have seen the uh, concurrency control mechanism, all the concurrency control mechanism that are available there. Okay, as well as in distributed system is also implied here, as well as in operating system. So in operating system, there is something called inter-process communication. Okay, so you may have seen in your, if you are studying OS, in OS again, the processes have also the problem that every process tries to access the same resource at the same time. So what happens then? So for that, again, the concurrency control mechanism is also defined, that is very similar to the concurrency control methods that are already defined in DBMS. Okay, so concept, when one concept is for invented in computer science, they are used across all the subjects. Okay, so you may have seen this particular thing. Okay, so that is why I see I regard this subject, if you understand computer science, if you understand one concept, or I'll say one subject of computer science, one or two concepts will be applied in other subjects. So that is why it is very interesting to see. Okay, now from this, only by adding a relay agent, we are able to forego many disadvantages. Okay, so the first disadvantage was that it was a distributed system. Now it becomes it is solved. Now it become a centralized system. With this, the complex updation and deletion will again will be avoided. Now, an only disadvantage that is remaining, that the table is still static. Okay, so if you're seeing here, table is still static here. Okay, so it means that there is no dynamic entry. If one IP address, if one particular machine MAC address is assigned a particular IP address, now this IP address cannot be changed. Okay, so it will be at the lifetime, this particular IP address will be assigned to only one machine. It cannot be changed now. Okay, so this is one disadvantage. Now to solve this problem, there is something called DHCP. Okay, so this is one of the most popular protocol that is used right now. Okay, so it is a very I'll say it is a very new protocol and it is used right now also. Okay, so the full form is dynamic host configuration protocol. Okay, so now how this DHCP works, it is basically it is implemented for dynamic table. Okay, so keep that in mind. Now it is only just not implemented for dynamic table. There are two entries here. Okay, so the static entries are also present in DHCP as well as the dynamic entries are also present. So I'll tell you about it. Why we need static entries, because suppose if you are hosting a web service, okay, so like your email client or your file storage service like a Dropbox or OneDrive or something like that. Okay, so you will only purchase one IP address and that IP address will be active always, because if you are hosting a file service site or your Dropbox, something like Dropbox, now you are uploading your files on the cloud. Okay, so suppose you are doing like something like this for your files, it will be accessible to you at any point of time. Okay, so how it is accessible to you, because the IP address that is assigned to this particular web server will not change. Okay, why it is not changing? Because there is no point in changing the IP address if it is always using that IP address. Okay, so suppose if you are always using the something, why do I take away that thing and give you another thing? Okay, so something like that. If you have a web server, it is using a specific IP address, I do not want to change it, because it is not sitting idle, it is always doing work on that particular IP address. Okay, so that is why your DHCP table will something look like this. It will have the entry of it will have a static entries as well as a dynamic entry. So suppose this is your static part of the table. Okay, so I'll say this is my static part of the table. Here it is a MAC address. Here it is an IP address. Okay, so MAC address. All suppose there are three web servers I'm hosting here. So all of these have the IP address that I would know it will not change. Okay, so suppose these are servers here. One point. Another point will be now. Why it is so flexible, because it also has the static entries. Okay, so all the time we do not want dynamic entries, we also want static entries, so that particular thing is fulfilled by this particular protocol. Okay, so that is why it is so popular. Okay, so now another thing is, now I need a dynamic entry part also. Now how this dynamic entry will work? Okay, so if I introduce you to the field, only one field is added there, so I'll write it like this. Okay, so IP, and this is your MAC address, this is your IP address, and this will be your lease time. Okay, suppose you have a MAC address MA and the corresponding IP address I have taken, I have assigned it, and I've given it for only 10 minutes. Okay, so it may be way less than that, but still I'm taking any random number. Okay, so now when you are in an organization like Bennett University, you will purchase some IP addresses from the ISP. Okay, so ISP, your internet service provider, you purchase some uh, uh, IP addresses from the ISP and you put it in a pool. Okay, so this is called your IP pool. Okay, so this IP pool contains all the IP addresses that you have purchased. Okay, now what you do when your machine wants to get to online, what it do, the DHCP take any random IP address which is available and assign it to a particular machine for only 10 minutes. Okay, so now after 10 minutes, what happens is that this particular machine or this particular machine again send a renew request. Okay, renew request to DHCP. Suppose I'm doing something. Okay, so when I'm accessing internet, what happens is that if I'm sitting idle, okay, so if I'm sitting idle, I'm not doing anything. So my IP address goes again back to the pool. Okay, so when you are surfing internet, then it's fine. But if it is not, if you're just connected to internet and you're not doing anything on the internet, what happens after some time? Your IP address will goes back into the IP pool. Okay, so after 10 minutes, if you are again accessing, if you are still doing something on the internet, you are always doing something on the internet, after 10 minutes, your OS, there is no need to, you do not need to send any request. Your OS will automatically send a new request to DHCP server saying that I want to renew, because the user is still using the same, using the internet right now. So I want to renew my lease for another 10 minutes. Okay, so after 10 minutes again, if you are still using the internet, it will again renew the lead. If you're not, the IP address will go back to its pool. Okay, so that is how your uh, dynamic entries work. Okay, so you need a static entry, you need a dynamic entry. Now what is the advantage of using a dynamic entry? Okay, so other than that, everything is similar. Okay, so one thing is that I want to underline that it is there is no guarantee you will get a same IP at every time. Okay, so there is no guarantee of same IP every time. Okay, so from this pool, your IP or your public IP can change. Okay, so that is your main thing. The public IP is the IP that you need to interact, that you need to get online. Okay, so keep that in mind. There is private IP that will be permanent, but there is public IP as well. Okay, so now with this, everything is similar. Okay, so if you remember, it has a relay agent as well. So all the things that we have discussed, everything is similar, only the table entries type of thing is changed. Okay, so how the table is maintained is changed, everything is similar. Now what is the advantage of it? Okay, so suppose if I take a scenario like I have two labs. Okay, so suppose I'm opening a college, and in that college I'm just building the infrastructure still, so I do not have enough money. Okay, so I only have two labs. Okay, so from these two labs, there are 50 pieces that are kept here and 50 pieces that are kept here. Okay, so according to the rule of the thumb, I should purchase 100 IPs. Yeah, because there are 50 pieces here, 50 pieces here. But what I can do, if in order to in order to decrease this cost by half, I can only purchase 50 IPs. Okay, so now how can I make this work? Because if I have a DHCP server, if I have a DHCP server, I only need 50 IPs to make it work. How? So I will say that lab 1 will be kept from 11 to 12, and lab 2 will be kept from 12 to 1. Okay, so now what happens now, if these two labs were conducted simultaneously, there is no doubt I cannot do it, because I only have 50 IP. So my whole scheme will fail. But if I just divide these labs according to the timetable, I'll say lab 1 will be accessed only from 11 to 12, and lab 2 will be accessed from only 12 to 1. So what happens in now, when you are accessing lab 1, I have purchased 50 IPs, so all the 50 IP addresses are available there. Okay, so when the time is over, now you're sitting idle in lab 1. At that time, the 50 IPs are available to this lab 2 pieces to take it from the pool. Okay, so that is why I'm just using a DHCP server. I am able to decrease the cost of purchasing the IPs by half. Okay, so that is the main advantage of using a DHCP server. It is so effective, it is so efficient, and it saves a lot of money to a lot of people. Okay, so that is why DHCP is so popular at now. Right now, it is so popular that it is already built in your router. Okay, so what you do, if you want to see your interface of the router, you can just directly go towards 192 plus 0.168.1.1, something like that, or 0.0.1. You may be able to log in inside your router. It will ask your username, password. Mostly it will be admin, and password will be also admin, or password will be password. So that is written on your router. Okay, so going inside the interface of your router, you may be able to see something called a DHCP. Okay, so when you click on DHCP, you will see how many devices that are actually connected to you, and what IP address is assigned to those devices. Okay, so you will also get to see live that if one particular device is sitting idle, how this DHCP just do not renew the request and assign take back the IP address into the pool. If you refresh after some time, you will be able to see this particular point. Okay, so that is why again you may be thinking that when you study these things and when you implement it practically, it may be a little bit different. Okay, so why? Because you may be thinking that DHCP is available at application layer, and I'm saying that DHCP is already or present inside routers, but we already know router had only three layers up till until network layer. Okay, so again when you do things theoretically and when you see things practically, it may be a lot different. Okay, so now DHCP in theory it is at application layer, and if router has only three layers, in theory DHCP cannot be in the router. Okay, but still it exists in the router. So again, every Cisco router have this capability of inbuilt DHCP. Okay, so there are some features that are directly implemented inside the router without caring about any kind of a layer. Okay, so when you're doing practically, the things maybe might a little bit different, but all the concept that we have studied, what happens in DHCP are the same. Okay, so keep that in mind. It's not a part of theory, but just I'm telling you practically it is implemented like that, but just forget about this part. Okay, so now okay, so now another thing, another advantage of DHCP is that it is backward compatible. Okay, so if you have a bootp server, so why it is so popular? Because initially we used to use bootp server. Why? And when DHCP came, this DHCP was backward compatible to bootp. Okay, so it means that it is very easy to update or upgrade your system to DHCP. Okay, because if you have purchased 100 IPs, still these 100 IP will easily work on DHCP. So that is why when this particular protocol came, it becomes an instant hit because it is very easy to upgrade, as well as it is saving many people many money. Okay, so that is why DHCP is so popular and it is implemented right now at this time also. Okay, so now with this, your four protocols. Okay, so keep that in mind. I've discussed four protocols. First two are ARP and RARP. Both of these are implemented at network layer, and another two was bootp and DHCP. Okay, so both of these implemented at application layer. Keep that in mind. Okay, so most of the students have confusion because what happens is that from ARP and RARP, many books also discuss RARP with bootp. Okay, so it might be it is specifically written there, it is of application layer, but yeah, because it is very similar to RARP, most of the people think that bootp is also in network layer. Okay, so don't make that mistake. Okay, so I know because this particular question is asked so many times and many of the students make the same mistake of thinking that bootp lies in the network layer. Okay, so keep that point in mind. It's very, very important. Okay, so now with this, now the most popular protocol at network layer is IP protocol. Okay, so internet protocol. So I'll discuss this protocol also. Okay, just wait a second. Okay. So now IP protocol. Okay, so just so now internet protocol, if you remember, it has it lies in your network layer. So because it is at network layer, so it will receive a packet from transport layer and then network layer and then your DLL layer. Okay, so it will get segments from network layer, and here it is also referred to as something called fragments, or what is it? It is called also packets. Okay, at DLL you already know it called string. Okay, so now I want to tell you that what exactly is the difference between these three particular terms, that why we use segment, why we use fragment, and why we need to use these particular different terms for the same thing. Okay, so one thing, again I'll read this particular line, that internet protocol is a layer 3 protocol, OSI. It is talking about OSI that takes data segments from layer 4, that is from transport layer, and divides it into packets. Okay, so IP packet encapsulate data unit received from the above layer and adds on header information. Okay, so if you remember, uh, it is one of the most important protocol. Keep that in mind. IP is one of the most important protocol. So I'm only telling you about version 4. Okay, so because it is, most of the question will be asked from this particular version 4 point. Okay, so now understand this point, that the total length field. Okay, so the total length field that is given in this one is 16 bits. Okay, so what is the meaning of it? If the total length of the header can be 2 raised to power 16 minus 1. Okay, so why minus 1? Because it will be from 0 to 2 raised to power 16 minus 1, because it will be starting from 0. That is why I am subtracting 1 point here. Okay, so now understand this point, that uh, when the total length at a network layer can be maximum 2 raised to power 16 minus 1, that is 65535. Okay, so that is total length. So I'll again show you what is the total length means. Total length is the length of entire IP packet, include IP header or IP payload, means your data. Okay, so what you want to send. Okay, so maximum it can be of this length. Okay, so now what is the meaning of this? Okay, so now see, at network layer it is saying you can have a maximum payload, or your, what do you say, packet. Maximum packet has a size of 65535. Okay, so you can say it, out of which 20 bytes will be of 20 bytes will be of header information. 20 bytes will be of header information. So I'll tell you this is 20 bytes. Okay, so just assume that it is 20 bytes. I'll show you how. Now assume the header information is 20 bytes. Okay, so now what is 65535 minus 20 will be 65515. Okay, in the similar way, when you go towards upward the transport layer, so it means that this particular information 20 bytes will be embedded. Okay, so this is embedded, the packet that is coming from the segment that is coming from the transport layer. Okay, so it means uh, before adding 20 bytes the information was here at transport layer. Before adding 20 bytes the information here was 65515. Okay, so the information originated from application layer, and then it goes to transport layer. Transport layer the information may be 65515, out of which again 20 bytes will be of your header. Okay, that is TCP or maybe UDP, but 20 bytes correspond to a header. So what is the payload or your data information here will be, so 65515 minus 20, so it will be 655, it will be 6520495. Okay, so 65495. Now there are there are 2 points to understand. Okay, so you get the information from application layer, so there is some message, and that message length can be maximum of 65495. Maximum, it can be maximum of this, because after that transport layer will also add its header. So that had now that information will become 65515, and again when it is transferred to network layer, it will again add its own header, that is 20 byte header, and it will the maximum information at network layer will become 65535. Okay, so now there are two things to understand here. The maximum datagram at network layer, datagram means the whole packet. At network layer it can be of 65535. The maximum payload, okay, so payload means your data, payload at network layer it can be of -20, 65515. And now the maximum datagram at transport layer, it will be of 65515 if I say maximum datagram. And if I say maximum payload at transport layer, it will be of 65495 -20. Okay, so understand this point, it's very important to understand. Okay, so that is how I always say when you get a message from application layer, you will add something. Okay, so transport layer will add its own header, and then network layer will add its own header. Okay, so due to header information, I get to know that at network layer the total length of the packet can be 16 bits. Okay, so if it is 16 bits, actually how many combinations are possible with 16 bits? It will be 2 raised to power 16. Okay, so if you start from 0, it will be 2 raised to power 16 minus 1. Okay, so that is why I've said this. So maximum number you can represent, keep that in mind, the maximum number you can represent. So why it is 6553i, why I am subtracting one bit from here, because if you see that if you have 4 bits, okay, so if you have 4 bits, the maximum number you can represent is 15. If you have 2 bits, the maximum number you can represent is 3, not 4. Okay, so it will be 0, 1, 2, 3. If you remember, 2 bits, 0, 0, 0, 1, 1, 0, and 1, 1. Okay, so if I can write like this, the maximum number I can represent by using 2 bits is 2 raised to power 2 minus 1. Okay, in the similar way, the maximum number I can represent with the 4 bits is maximum 4 ones. Okay, so that will be 2 raised to power 4 minus 1. That is why I'm said the maximum number I can represent with 16 bits, it will be 2 raised to power 16 minus 1. Okay, so 2 raised to power 16 will be 65536, but I cannot represent 36. It will be, because if I put 16 once, it will be 65535, based on the same analogy that I'm taking here. Okay, so now first is your version. So if you're seeing here, understand this point, it is 0 to 3. It means the version will be of 4 bits. 4 to 7, what it means is that the header length will be of, again 4 to 7 is again 4 bits. Okay, another thing, 8 to 11, now how many bits are remaining? I think 4 plus 4, 8. It will be 8 bits. 8 to 15. Okay, so here 16 bits are over now, the remaining 16 bits. So if you're seeing here, total it is 32 bits. Okay, so I can call it 4 bytes. Okay, 32 bits is 4 bytes, I can call it that. In a similar way, identification is 0 to 15. It means 16 bits are of identification. Flags, it is 16 to 18. It means 3 bits. And fragment spacing or fragment offset. Okay, so it is also referred to as fragment offset. It is from I think it is from 19 to 31. So it is 13 bits. Okay, because 13 plus 3 is 16. So if you are seeing here, it is total 32 bits, and this particular represents the midpoint. So the 3 here, 13 here, it will be 16. Okay, so somewhat like that. Your lifespan time is 0 to 7. So it will be again of 8 bits here, and 8 to 15, it's again 8 bits. It is 16 bits. Now it is 32 bits, and I think the option is a bit different. The option part is optional. First of all, the option part is optional. There are many options. I will show you 2 or 3 options here. What are the 2 or 3 options? Another one will be the minimum. It can be of 0, because if you are not using option, and maximum it can be of 40 bytes. Maximum it can be of 40 bytes. Okay, so I can call this is 40 bytes. It is 4 bytes. This is 4 bytes. This is 4 bytes. Okay, so when you add it, it is 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So 20 byte, or optional is that 40 byte. Okay, so if you add, if you are using option, the length can vary from 20 bytes to 40 plus 20 is 60 bytes. Okay, so the header length is from 20 bytes to 60 bytes. Okay, so that is how it is calculated. Now understand this point. When version indicate that, you already know the version is only indicating the version. So I'm using IPv4. So what is the version? Here will be 0100. Okay, so this is the version. Another thing, if you want to include what was it? If you want to include the IPv6, now you are having 4 bits. You can use 0110. Okay, so that will be your IPv6. Okay, so only 2 versions are there. There is no third version, but still we have left many numbers empty, because if you are using in the coming future, we will be able to use another version. So that is why we kept the features there. Okay, so only 2 versions are there. It can either be IPv4 or it can either be IPv6. So you are using IPv4, so this particular number will be always fixed to 0100. Okay, another thing is your type of service. So just read about it. It is just indicate something like delay, precedence, reliability, minimum cost, and throughput, something like this. Okay, now main thing is total length. Okay, so total length, I think I have already explained you that the length of the entire packet will be 65535. Another thing is identification. Okay, so I think I left one thing here, that is header length. Okay, so now coming back to it, you already know the header length is 20 bytes to 60 bytes. Okay, so the header length is 20 bytes to 60 bytes. But if you see here, the bits that are available is only 4. Okay, so with 4 bits you can maximum get 15 number. You cannot get 20 number or 60 number. Okay, so how can you represent 20 and 60? So use a scaling factor of 4. Okay, so here the scaling factor of 4 is used. Okay, so what is the meaning of it? So suppose your uh, your header length at a time is 20, so you divide by 4, and if your header length is 60, you divide by 4. Okay, so what is it? So it will be 5 to 15. Okay, so now your 20 to 60 byte now change to 5 to 15. Now what it means, that if your header length contains 5, so you multiply it by 4, you will get 20 bytes. If it contains 6, you multiply it by 4, you will get 24 bytes. Okay, so something like that. Okay, so you have used a scaling factor. Okay, so whatever you are using here, if you multiply it, you will get back the original value. Okay, because I only have 4 bits, so how can I represent? So I have used a scaling factor of 4 to represent 20 to 60 bytes. Okay, so there may be problem like something like if you have a header length of 30. Okay, so if you have a header length of 30 byte, what will you do? 30 by 4. Okay, so now what happens here? It is, I think, 7.5. Okay, so either you can consider 7 or you can consider 8. So always you use the seeding value. Okay, so I do not want to represent it by 7, because there might be some bit loss here. So I use the 8th part. Okay, so keep that in mind. Okay, again, if you see here, what will happen here? If you include 7, it will be 7 into 4, 28. So 2 bytes are remaining. But if you use 8, it is 8 into 4, that is 32. So 2 bytes are extra here. Okay, so if you're seeing here, 2 bytes are extra. So what you do, you can take a padding 30 plus 2 byte of padding. Okay, so padding is available in your option part. You can take a padding from the option part there. Okay, so worst case it can be like that. So that is why I say take the ceiling value, not the floor value, because if you take a floor value, actually it is actually contributing to 28 bytes, but it is not the case. The actual was 30 bytes. Okay, so now what is it? What is the identification is done? Yeah, I think. Okay, so I know what is identification. When you reach at network layer, so you divide the packet into smaller packets. Okay, so identification bits are, I think, 16. Yeah, 16 bits. So it means you can divide 2 raised to power 16 minus 1. So you can have 65535 numbers. Okay, so you can assign, you can divide the packet and assign the numbers from 1 to 65535. Sorry, 0 to 65535, because 16 bits are available to you. So you can maximum you can divide the packet into 65535. Every packet will have a unique, what you say, uh, every packet will have a unique number. Okay, so if you're dividing it into 65535, then every packet will have a unique number. But if you are dividing it more than that, that might be a problem, because one packet can use more numbers. So you cannot go beyond 65535. So that is why identification bit is kept as 16 bits. Okay, another thing now is your flag bit. Okay, so in this flag this flag is called the empty flag. So there is nothing in use here because it is of 3 bits. So first flag is not used. Second flag is your more fragment flag, and third flag is your do not fragment flag. Okay, so I'll tell you about these two flags. Now 3 bits mean 3 flag. Okay, so now I show your flag part. Okay, so I can show the flag part. Okay, so I'll just keep. Okay, so suppose I'm talking about do not fragment flag. I'll give you example so that you can understand it easily. DF. Okay, so its meaning is actually very clear from the word. It says that do not fragment. Okay, so suppose there is a network here. There the net maximum transmission unit it can accept is 1000 bytes, something like that. It is connected to a router, and this is connected to another network that is having a MTU size of maximum 100. Okay, so what happens is that when you forward your 1000 byte packet to the router, now the router, because it has a network layer, so it starts to fragment. Why? Because it knows that the destination network, this network, cannot accept MTU or the packet of size 100,000 bytes. Okay, so it cannot accept a MTU of 1000 bytes. For what it do, it divides the 1000 byte into 100. Okay, so what it do, it will divide it by 10, and it will divide the smaller packets. Sorry, it will divide it by 100 and it will get 10 packets, and it will transfer the 10 packets to network 2 because it is able to accept the 10 packets, because the MTU size here is maximum transmission unit size. It means this network can accept maximum 100 bytes packet. Okay, so it is very easy. So you do not need to do any fragmentation. The router at on the way can do it. But if you set here, if you're sending some packet, there will be a header. Okay, so if you're sending 1000 byte packet, there will be a header here. Now this header contains something called a do not fragment flag. If it is set to 1, it means the router cannot divide the packets into smaller fragments. Okay, so if do not fragment bit is 1, it means it cannot divide the packet into smaller packets. So what it'll do, the packet it will reply back towards the sender saying I cannot send, or it is saying ICMP packet, it will message it I cannot send it. It will say that there is an error because if you have enabled the do not fragment bit as 1, so the network 2 accepts do not accept your packet, your transmission unit, because it accept the unit less than that. Okay, so that is why ICMP packet goes back to network 1. uh, it works out. If now if the user is standing here, it understand that there is what is the problem here. So if it is set do not fragment bit to 0, now there will be no problem. So the network, this router will be able to divide it and it will send to the other part. Okay, so it is as easy as that. Okay, another one is more fragment. So more fragment is quite simple. It is just saying that if more fragment is coming, it indicates more fragments are following me. Okay, so suppose uh, more fragments are following me. Okay, so if you set the bit to 1, it means the more fragments are following me. If it's set to 0, it means I am the last fragment. So what it means, suppose you got a fragment, you divide it into 3 parts, and you send it like that. Okay, so this will be your first fragment, you send it, second fragment and third fragment. The more fragment bit of this packet will be set to 1 because two fragments are following it. The more fragment bit of this one is also set to 1 because one fragment is following it. The most fragment flag of this particular packet will be 0. Why? Because no fragment is following it. Okay, so that is how your more fragment bit work. Now another one is your fragment offset. Okay, so I can take an example. So it will just indicate that how many data bytes are ahead of a particular fragment. Okay, so I can take an example. Just wait a second. You can take a fragment and again divide it into 3 parts. So what it means is that 0, 0. Okay, so suppose you have divided into 2 parts, 3 parts. This is your first fragment, second fragment and third fragment. Okay, so you send it like that. Now the offset bit, how it will be set? So it will indicate that how many fragments are following me. Okay, so this is the first. Okay, so just let me see what is the definition here. This offset tells the exact position of the fragment in the original IP packet. Okay, so it will say that I am the first fragment. So it will say my offset is 0 because this is the first fragment. Now this is your second fragment. Now the offset of this will be 1, indicating that there is one fragment ahead of me. Now what is the fragment offset of this third will be? It will be 2. It is indicating that 2 more fragments are ahead of me. I am at the third part. Okay, so that is how it works. Okay, so understand 0 means it is indicating I am the first fragment. No one is ahead of me. This one is indicating that one fragment is ahead of me. This 2 is indicating that two fragments are ahead of me. So what is fragment offset? Fragment offset is of 3 bit 13 bits, so you can get 2 raised to power 13 minus 1 maximum number, whatever it is. Okay, so you cannot go beyond that number. Okay, so there are some points remaining. I will tell you in the next one, so don't worry. So there are some points remaining. I will tell you in the next one. So if anybody have any doubt, just let me know. You can move on to the next one.